as we get 2024 properly kicked off and the wrestling business stays busy as always, and to help me dissect it all, join me on the hotline, my good friend from Ad Free Shows. It is Dominic DeAngelo. Dom, Happy New Year, my friend.
Happy New Year, Stu. Man, what a way to kick off the new year with you. And on top of it, it's Royal Rumble season, which is always great. My favorite time of the wrestling year is just around the bend.
It's always fun, and we'll get to that here in a second. Before we get to everything, though, I wanted to give you a chance to promote you. So you already do the RVD podcast,
Right?
yeah. You now have a new podcast involving Magnum TA and Greg Gagne. Talk about that for a second.
Yeah. So we didn't venture too far off in the realm of creativity with the name. It's just called Gagne and Magnum. But I figured that would catch some eyes there. A legendary name like Gagne and obviously Magnum TA. But we just recorded our first episode last week, and then it just posted. If you're, we're recording this on Tuesday, but it just dropped today, basically, first episode. We cover Kerry Von Erich, so very Texas oriented, obviously. And we look at his figure that they have. They have that Power Town figure line that they go on. And
oh, yeah,
those amazingly detailed figures. So we're going to take time to do spotlights on certain talents too, and they don't necessarily have to have figures, but we figured with Iron Claw out and they just released a limited edition diamond collection version of the Iron Claw with Kerry Von Erich. So I was like, it's probably a good one to kick it off with is Kerry Von Erich. So we touch upon him, but then we cover modern topics too. We talk a lot about CM Punk, and we talk a lot about what plans might be for WrestleMania 40, and both guys are still very in tune with the product. And it's awesome to get their perspectives, and how their worlds kind of came together is just wild to think too, because Greg's AWA and Magnum was always down south in the NWA circuit. So for these two to kind of meet up and have these meeting of the minds, it's pretty darn cool. And they really want to honor the legends of tomorrow that don't maybe necessarily get a lot of the credit that you would see on today's product. And they want to make that connection, bridge that connection between the modern fan and the legacy of pro wrestling. So I'm very excited to be a part of it. So
I would think so. I mean, Magnum TA, he's one of those that just the name just brings memories. His feud with Mr. Wrestling 2 in Mid-South, and then of course teaming up with Dusty and Crockett and stuff like that. And then of course Greg Gagne was such a mainstay in the AWA. And of course his father, the legendary Vern Gagne, who ran the AWA. So I gotta imagine that there's going to be a lot of great stories and a lot of great insight from two absolute legends. I wanted to ask you real quick. You talked about your first episode dealing with Kerry Von Erich. I assume you've seen the Iron Claw.
Yes.
What did you think?
I liked it. Maybe I actually wrote an article for SEScoops.com on it, and then me and my brother Marcus, I saw it with my brother Marcus. So we went to see it together, and we had the advanced screening, and wow, it was such a heavy movie. Obviously, the content that was with it, obviously what they covered, and the acting though was top notch. They obviously took some liberties, I would say, definitely did, but overall, it really conveyed the story of the Von Erichs and what the director and I think the cast wanted to get across. So, and it's a good way to kind of honor them. But overall, I very much liked it. I liked the aspect. McElhaney as Fritz Von Erich really stole the show for me.
Yes.
But overall, the movie, yeah, you got to be ready. You got to be ready once you go. You got to mentally prepare yourself, because the content is obviously tragic. So when you look at from that perspective.
Yeah, and I've told people before, I said, when you go see this movie, don't see it as a wrestling movie. See it as a movie about brothers.
Yes.
And the bond they had, and the relationship they had, and what they went through, the tragedies and stuff. I mean, I remember those days. Of course the first, when David passed away, and what the movie even portrayed how big of a deal David's funeral was. And I remember vividly, they were doing closed circuit TV for the funeral and such, and then one by one with the other brothers, and So yeah, it's very heavy. You need to prepare yourself emotionally for it. But yeah, it's a fantastic movie. So let's get to WWE first. And we saw on SmackDown Karrion Cross returning with Scarlett, a brunette Scarlett. And here comes Authors of Pain. Here comes Paul Ellering. Apparently, they're going to be a faction. Does this move the needle for you?
Yeah, well, for me personally, it does. I've always loved Karrion Cross, Killer Cross, and Scarlet. I thought he was one of those kind of really in the late 2010s, I guess. Like he was really one of those pioneers to make video content like online and his own stuff and promote himself and get the word out about himself and make it kind of captivating and cryptic and creepy and weird and all that kind of thing. And so he's just been hustling for such a long time. And like, I was very happy when he was the NXT champion and he was getting his flowers there. And same with Scarlett, that whole presentation and act was amazing. Then obviously what happened when he got called up to the main roster didn't really catch fire. He got released and then he's back and kind of been floating in almost like a purgatory almost until like this is what you want to see when it comes to like Karrion Cross. And then not only that, but this is what you wanted to see with AOP and Paul Ellering and them in the mix. And they feel like this gonna be this soon to be unstoppable force. And I think if they handle it right, and Triple H sure knows what he's doing, and he's definitely a fan of Karrion Cross, that you could make this the next kind of big bad faction comparable to the Bloodline that's kind of on its downward spiral, right? Not downward spiral, but on the downhill of the story. So I think you can pick this up right where you left off in a lot of ways and make this the nice, awesome, badass, creepy faction that you're looking for. So I'm very excited, Stu. I love it.
I agree with you. Obviously Karrion Cross has not had the even currently hasn't had the greatest run, but
Mm-hmm.
pairing him with AOP, putting Precious Paul there, it has potential to be, like you said, one of those just a badass type of faction that's going to run roughshod. And if they do it right, yeah, this is going to be it's going to be some good television to watch. Seeing them, we have Kevin Owens beating Santos Escobar to win the U.S. title tournament. So now he's going to face Logan Paul at Royal Rumble for that U.S. title. Now, I will readily admit I am not a Logan Paul fan. I couldn't care less about Logan Paul. I think quite frank, and again, I'm an old guy. I think it's an insult to the U.S. title that Logan Paul's carrying it around just because he's a YouTube star.
Yeah.
Um, However, I also understand that Triple H and WWE, they love the eyeballs, they love, the exposure. And for that reason, I I hate to doubt him, but I don't think Kevin Owens coming away with that title. What do you think?
I have to agree. I think Kevin Owens is going to do the job of doing the job basically, where he's going to make Logan Paul look good, and Logan Paul is obviously athletic and talented in the ring from just the small resume that he has.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it really will add to who he ultimately will probably challenge at WrestleMania 40. Whoever that may be, whether that's a Rey Mysterio or like for a rematch or somebody else that we're maybe not expecting. But like, I would almost think that, hey, they could have make this actually the WrestleMania match, Kevin Owens versus Logan Paul. But yeah, I think, Kevin Owens knows his role at this point, and I'm sure he's fine with doing it. But yeah, I understand where you're coming from too, where it comes to Logan Paul. Like, it's just like, hey, a YouTube star. He's no Muhammad Ali either, so it's not like he's had a super athletic, known for his athleticism and background. Sure, he is athletic and he's really takes to it, but like it kind of doesn't uh delineate the pro wrestler between your normal Joe Schmo in certain ways when it comes to that. So, but ultimately, I get it. I do totally get it. And I think last time I was on here, Stu, I said that was going to be a good move to do, even though despite me not being a Logan Paul fan either.
Well,
So
and that's the thing. Look, I think we all know everybody watches everything,
right,
and I'm sure Triple H, he caught some views of Tyra showing up on Fox News with that NWA World Title,
it's a
and
great
he got
point.
to thinking, hey, I can do this with Logan Paul. Why not? So
Yeah,
I get it. I understand it. I'm not crazy about it, but I get it. And again, I'm not the target audience. I'm older. I don't, it's one of those things where it's just, he doesn't do anything for me, but I get why everybody's excited. So I do agree. I think Kevin Owens versus Logan Paul at Mania would be a great match, but I got to feel it may be Rey Mysterio if he can make it back from injury. If it's not Rey Mysterio, it could be there's a myriad of guys that could fill that slot and do a fine job. So, um, we had Roman Reigns make his how do we say that every 2 to 3 months he said, oh, I'm gonna show up on SmackDown. It's kind of easy to keep a title for as many days as Roman does when you don't show up and you don't defend it that much. um we saw the same thing with Brock Lesnar back in the day. So anyway, Roman shows up. They decided to do this triple threat with AJ Styles, Randy Orton, LA Knight. Match is going on, and then all of a sudden, here comes Roman, here comes Solo Sikoa, here comes Jimmy Uso. They basically interfere, beat everybody down, and so Nick Aldis says, "Fine." At the Royal Rumble, it's going to be a four-way. I get why they do this. I want to ask you though. So I saw something, the next record that Roman possibly could reach would be Hulk Hogan's first run, which
mm-hmm.
I think is 1,474 days.
Okay.
Does he, or does he relieve us all by dropping the title at Mania, or before he hits that 1,400 mark?
I think whether the story is finished for Cody or not, and whether Cody finishes the story, I think the story for Roman will be finished at WrestleMania or in the around the fringe, like either after or like I don't know how they're gonna follow up or tell the story basically. But I think this won't. I don't think he will because if I'm not mistaken, he's at like 1,100 and something days right now. And that's a really long time to still keep the belt on him. And especially if you're getting a match between him and The Rock, which is what people really been wanting to see for years on end. You're going to get that paid off one way or another, I think, here coming up, whether Rock wins or loses. And then on top of it, yeah, you still have that intriguing element where you'll be perfectly fine. You'll be more than fine at this juncture to have Cody hold the title or even an Orton hold the title or somebody like that, where it's just like, okay, Roman's done his part. And maybe The Rock wants to do the honors for Roman just as a family favor and to help him out, or maybe vice versa, where they're like, "Hey, we're gonna make money just having The Rock win the title here after this. How many years of this match get promoted?" But I think Roman will be done. I don't think they'll. I mean, obviously, like, oh, how cool would it be to have Roman carry on more so? But there's also that added aspect where, okay, he's not defending it nearly as much as Hogan did at the time. And on top of it, he's not nearly defending it as much as Seth Rollins is doing with the other title at this current juncture. So it doesn't necessarily make sense from that standpoint. I think, much like the bloodline, I think this whole thing is going to run its course here around the end of WrestleMania season.
Well, and I've said since SummerSlam, I said the bloodline storyline has finally jumped the shark.
Right.
It's time to do let's close it out. Just have Solo turn on him or something, because it's getting old. It's getting tiresome.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, Roman. it's time to take that title off of now. When Rock showed up on Raw, he made the comment, and of course, everybody said, "Okay, it's going to be Rock and Roman at Mania."
Mm-hmm.
That that would be I guess, on the surface, a logical conclusion. I've seen the reports though where when WWE did their agreement with Western Australia for Elimination Chamber, the government of Western Australia requested The Rock. Plus, Rock versus Roman doesn't need a title.
Sure.
That match, you could have that match. It could be a non-title or whatever. Put the head of the table status on the line or whatever. So, my thinking, and maybe this is just personal bias, my thinking is Rock Roman at Chamber,
Mm-hmm.
and then Roman Cody night 2 of Mania, and Cody finally finishes the story. What do you think?
There's that marketing appeal, and I was listening to the episode of Strictly Business with Eric Bischoff and John Alba, and they were making the case for that to happen at Elimination Chamber as well. And like from that perspective of like, okay, the WWE is a global entity right now, and they're really making an effort to kind of branch out into that global international aspect. And with these PLEs being, whether it's in Berlin or London or Paris, and then now Perth, Australia here. So I mean, from that aspect, you're like, yeah, I mean, like how bigger can you get? But I mean, I think you still can lean on the spectacle of having uh of not Rock versus Roman. You have the spectacle of just being at Elimination Chamber and having it be in Perth, Australia is still a good selling point. Ultimately the fan, the storyteller, the intriguer of the story, being intrigued by the story, would want to think it just more boom, more WrestleMania 40. It's 40 years of WrestleMania. You're in Philadelphia. You're in the thick of like a wrestling like area, basically. Like it's the ECW country. It's even Flair country to an extent. And you have Roman versus The Rock. Like it's boom. It's right there. That's what it is. Ultimately, I see that the payoff of that being there. But I'm with you. I like Cody so much, and am a little biased towards like wanting to see Cody there and finish that story, because that is a storybook ending. He goes a whole year. He fights through Brock. He's fighting through Shinsuke Nakamura, Judgment Day, you name it, and he's got to try to get there and win it. Mm-hmm. You can ultimately get the payoff, I think, at another point too. Magnum TA actually on our show suggested that boom, you have The Rock win the title at WrestleMania, and then you could follow right up with a 3-way between The Rock, Randy Orton, and Cody Rhodes, and then you get the belt on Cody that way, and it's still a big headline match. Just doesn't happen at Mania, so that was another option. But yeah, I am. It's a catch-22 situation. You're gonna win in one way, but you're gonna not necessarily lose, but it's not gonna be what everybody wants at the end of the day either. So it's gonna be really interesting to see where they go with this too.
Yeah, look, WWE. I mean, it's a great problem for WWE have.
Right.
They are as hot as they've ever been, and you got all these top stars that are all up there, and so yeah, I'm sure Triple H, while he may be sweating the decision, I think he's also pretty happy that he's got so many choices. So, switching to Raw. So you had Ludwig Kaiser and Kofi Kingston. This comes out a week after Kofi Kingston didn't hit the drop kick on Giovanni Vinci and injured Vinci. Now Vinci may be out for several weeks. Ludwig Kaiser, he snaps. He goes after Kofi, attacks him. Slams his head against the steel steps, and all this good stuff. I mean, basically, just decimates Kofi. So I forget who it was I was hearing, but I heard somebody actually suggest this could be the lead in to Big E coming back. Now we know Big E, had the neck injury, many, 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 many months ago. I am of the feeling that if he is healthy, if he is cleared, and if he wants to get back in it, by all means, do it. But if there's even the slightest hint of possibility that maybe he's not 100%, don't. Let him live his life. He's having fun, doing the stuff. He was hanging out with the Michigan Panthers for the USFL, doing all the stuff with the Iowa Hawkeyes. Of course, that's his alma mater. What do you think? Could we see Big E coming back soon?
I would love that, to be honest. I'm with you though 100%. If he's not 100% A-okay and able to do what he was capable of doing in the ring, then yeah, it's like you don't want to risk anything like that. And who was it that they were talking about? I think it was, I can't remember. They were all talking about the neck injuries, and somebody had a very severe. Oh, TJ Wilson was talking about. I believe it was Chris Van Vliet. He's talking about his neck injury and how it's. And I know I'm sure it's not anywhere near the same of what Big E's was, but like he broke his neck up really close, and it's like the C2 or C1 vertebrae that he broke. Mm-hmm. And like the higher it gets, the more dangerous it is for you to get back in the ring, apparently. So if it's like lower, that's why Edge and Bryan Danielson, or people that have had neck surgeries before, were able to come back. So I don't know any of the details when it comes to what Big E's situation is, but if he's capable of doing it, man, it would be awesome to see him back in the mix. And because I mean, he was such a fun WWE champion, I thought too, when he held that title. And obviously he just had that momentum of charisma and personality, and growing up in like a preacher church kind of household where he was able to pull from that. And you see it from all the greats that are able to do it, from Dusty Rhodes to Muhammad Ali to John Cena, even like able to kind of cultivate that kind of mentality and that gumption, I guess, for lack of a better phrase. But yes, I would be all for Big E coming back if he's able to, for sure. And if I had to weigh on it, I would like to remain optimistic and think he could come back at some point.
Yeah. I me too. I hope he is 100%. I hope he can come back, and I think it'd be such a shot in the arm, to bring him back, and let's and just go with it. So
right.
Let's switch gears. Talk a little AEW. We had on Dynamite, after she has finished up all her obligations with Impact or TNA Wrestling, the virtuosa Deonna Purrazzo shows up on Dynamite, confronts Mariah May. This has got to be a pretty good shot in the arm to the women's division in AEW, having Purrazzo in there, multiple time knockouts world champion in Impact. She's, I think she held the AAA Reina de Reinas champion.
Yep.
Well, just talk for a second about Deonna Purrazzo becoming all elite.
Yeah, I think it's great. I believe it was Slammiversary 2021 where she fought Jordan Grace. And that was one of the matches of the year, to be honest. I thought like they stole the show. I want to say it was 2021, maybe it was 2022. Either way, it was just a fantastic match between two of the women, two of the knockouts at that point in time. And like ever since, I mean, Deonna has such a unique look and that kind of charisma that really stands out and puts her at that level that you want to see, like a Britt Baker, and like to that kind of, where you would love to see her go up against Thunder Rosa or Chris Statlander or Taya Valkyrie and whoever like else can maybe come in, or whoever might be rumored to come in too. But either way, it's like she fits that bill. Now it goes back to, I think, what we previously talked about on an old episode too, is like It's really all depends on how AEW handles the situation and books it all, because it lays it out. Because a lot of the times the microscope and the focus has not been on the women's division. So I mean, hopefully this appearance and everything like that is kind of like, hey, this is going to be our new year's resolution for AEW, is putting a bigger focus on the women's division and making it more about the story instead of some of the matchups that, oh, hey, this week, Chris Statlander's fighting Emi Sakura because that's what we're doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Instead of, hey, let's get this stuff going. Because I mean, I just brought up Taya Valkyrie, and that was another name that's just like, bam, she's there. She has that kind of tangibility and accessibility that people like and that can live vicariously through her. And then you don't see her that much. So it very much depends on how they handle it all overall. And that's across the board with AEW too at this juncture.
Right. Well, and if you believe the rumor innuendo with Mercedes Moné possibly coming in, that could set up some great matches with her and Perazo, along with, again, the rest of the women's division. But yeah, it's a matter of getting, they've got to find a way to book that stuff a whole lot better. And
they got to simplify it, Stu. It's just like so much of it is convoluted. It's all there. You can see it all. You can see a lot of the stars, but you forget them real quick, and it's so hard to keep your attention on it. If you simplify it, and I've been saying this for like years since watching AEW, is like, if you hone in on a certain amount of stars and just keep that focus there and roll with it. You want to, I don't know. I would love for Tony Khan to have one solid booking committee concrete booking committee that he has behind him that he can go to, instead of just, from what it sounded like, he was just like, oh, I have these people come in and out. Well, you're getting all these opinions and stuff like that. And then you're the ultimate decision maker. So if you're having all these opinions come in and you're making a decision and you have all this other work to do, it's like, boom, it's super convoluted. So I'm hoping that they kind of, from what it sounds, I hope they straighten their ducks backstage when it comes to booking a little bit and the creative aspect of it all.
Agreed. I totally agree. Adam Cole, he is now the devil. He brings out his faction, is now the Undisputed Kingdom. Now it's gonna be odd because MJF is gonna be out for a little while, healing up. May or may not have resigned with AEW. If he has, yeah, you'll get a payoff, but it's gonna be a while. We're talking, at probably Double or Nothing at the earliest, and maybe even go all the way to All Out. At the same time, this faction, I get, obviously I get Adam Cole and Matt Taven, Mike Bennett, and Roderick Strong. That's, those are Ring of Honor, stalwarts. Of course, Taven and Bennett and Cole, they were the Kingdom for a while. You get Roderick Strong, who was with Adam Cole in Undisputed Era in NXT. The odd guy is Wardlow, because it feels like they just put him in there because they have nothing else to do with him.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, so I think from a storyline perspective, it makes sense because of his heat with MJF overall, the overall story aspect of that. But yeah, squeezing him in there and kind of, a lot of people were just like, how I read and kind of noticed a lot of the interaction and the feedback that they were getting because of the reveal when it came to the Undisputed Kingdom, and like, it was predictable or whatever. And I don't think that was necessarily a bad thing, comes like, hey, they paid it off and now it all makes sense in a lot of ways of what they were doing, so for that aspect, and from a story aspect, it makes sense to have Wardlow in there. But yeah, I agree that I think, so many times that Wardlow has been heated up and then cooled down and heated up and then cooled down. And so, you, again, when it comes to this stuff, you just want them to kind of, boom, okay, put the focus on Wardlow, make him that unstoppable force again. And, I think from across the board, when it comes to these, from Bennett, Taven, and Strong, you already kind of reestablished them by making this reveal. and taking away the comedy aspect of it, I think you can do and make it more so. Hey, these guys are going to be like, again, kind of somebody that runs roughshod on a lot of the roster here. So I think you have that opportunity, and I think Adam Cole is going to be a very vital aspect to that component being successful, because he can be a great heel, and I think him setting that up and leading the way can only make the other guys benefit from it too, and that stands for Wardlow as well. So
Yeah.
uh,
Well,
I'm
and
intrigued. Yeah,
yeah, I am too. And obviously, you also have to, you know, wait on Adam Cole to heal up from his foot surgery. So you may not see him, have him out there, be on the mic, all that good stuff. That's great.
yeah.
You probably won't see him, actually in the ring until again, probably, Double or Nothing at the soonest, but could happen sooner. I get that. I guess it felt a little like leading up to World's End. If there, it felt like Wardlow wanted MJF, one on one, and he wasn't
Right.
worried about factions or teammates, whatever like that. So that's why in my brain it felt a little kind of out of left field. I mean, yeah, it makes sense. He's helping these guys attack MJF because of his hatred of MJF. Makes sense. It just, it just felt a little like maybe he was shoehorned in there. Hopefully it works out. Hopefully it'll be a good faction.
Well, maybe what he could do too is, and to your point, like since Adam Cole is hurt, you can really make Wardlow the conduit for Adam Cole in this whole thing, and then that gives Wardlow the incentive to. He's kind of almost the pseudo leader, almost of this group, or like the big heavy guy that is wants what he wants, and maybe he gets almost like this kind of his own power trip kind of identity of the whole thing, where he's just like leading the way, and he's kind of this unstoppable force. Now it goes to the point of, are they going to tell that story on television? And not only on television, are they going to tell it on one of their two primary products, particularly Dynamite in specific? So like, it's not lost on YouTube. It's not that the fan has to go and find this promo that maybe that establishes Wardlow as that person, but will they tell that story on their main product that people will be watching? So
It could be, and I think Adam Cole actually planted the seed on Wednesday when he talked about Taven and Bennett being the Ring of Honor Tag Team Champions, and Roderick Strong goes after the international title or whatever, and then Wardlow will get the world title, and then he mentioned and then forfeit it to me.
there you go. See,
There's that seed where he could plant that. Like you mentioned, Wardlow is kind of Adam Cole's proxy in the ring until Adam Cole gets better. And then, yeah, Wardlow figures out, hold it, I'm doing the same thing for Cole I used to do for MJF,
right?
and then turns on Cole. So,
Yep, the Batista, the big Batista
yeah,
movement.
same thing with Batista. Yeah. So,
Yep.
um, Samoa Joe, is the world champion. He had a challenge from someone quite unexpected in Hook, the
Yeah.
current FTW champion. Hook wants him a piece of Samoa Joe. He wants to go after the world title. What do you think of Hook versus Samoa Joe for the world title?
I love it. Now I would, and I love it that it's kind of out of left field too. And I hope this kind of speaks to, it's a great balance, because it was such a savvy move, I believe, to put the title on Samoa Joe moving forward with AEW, because yeah, they're in such a transitional period where it's like they're looking to get a TV deal, and they're looking to kind of like uh create who they are, really define who they are. And they're at such a, they've lost talent, so much talent. And like, they have this, just this Charlie Brown rain cloud sometimes coming over, what happens. And anytime a PLE pops up or a pay-per-view pops up, something else outside of the ring happens. And that's the big focus. So it's like getting somebody that has their head on their shoulders, that can cut a promo, that knows the key aspects of what is great about wrestling, is making money, winning titles, and kicking ass.
Mm-hmm.
Samoa Joe defines all that. now you have this young star that people have been clamoring very much at the beginning of his career, like in Hook, to he's got this groundswell of fandom and stuff like that, and like it has been this hot product. But again, don't see him that much. He kind of gets lost on Collision and Rampage or what have you. And now here's this opportunity. Boom, put him right there with Samoa Joe. You are establishing not only an established veteran in the ring, but you have this guy that people have been pulling for and one of your own homegrown talent in Hook. So I think it's the best of both worlds. Now, it's again the follow up. If whatever they do, how they execute the match is fine, and Hook could even lose in a certain way and still be fine. But you want to keep that thing cooking. You want to keep Hook in the mainstream aspect after this. You want to push him forward, and really put your chips behind him. So make it mean something is the key thing I think here with S2.
Yeah, I agree, and I think Hook versus Mojo could be a really fun match.
Yes.
Uh, almost contrasting styles. And I just that could really be something if they build it up right. That really could be a fun match and could be a great main event. I definitely for Dynamite or Collision, and I dare say it could main event a pay per view even. So
Yep.
going forward, um, we had FTR and the House of Black going against each other on Collision, and FTR, they're starting to succumb to the numbers game with, Brody King came down. It was originally Malachi Black and Buddy Matthews, and then here comes Brody King with a chair, and then again, seemingly out of left field, Daniel Garcia comes down to help FTR. Now I get, there's this rivalry between Daniel Garcia and Brody King coming from the Continental Classic. But that was an interesting choice to have Daniel Garcia come down and help out FTR. Could we see Daniel Garcia finally embracing his pro wrestler roots and shooing away the sports entertainer, facade?
I think so to a great extent. I think there'll be little aspects that I'll always keep with him, obviously, but yeah, from the pro wrestling identity and that what people have been clamoring, like having him want to be and stuff like that, and pushing for him. I think a good telling aspect of that was he being one of the people to speak at the World's End Media Scrum. Like I think that's an indication that hey, we're gonna put our more focus on Daniel Garcia, and so this will be this it yeah, from a move, it's just like, okay, it's almost like where you're trying to fit the puzzle pieces here, in certain guys. And like, yeah, we want this guy, but we can make him fit with FTR right now and pair him with FTR. I think so many of the times, though, FTR is getting paired with so many different people. It's just like, how many can we keep track here? Like, they've been with who? CM Punk, Edge,
Yeah, who's their friend, who's their foe,
right? Who's their
right?
friend? All this kind of stuff. And so there is that aspect. But yeah, I think it's probably a good sign indicator for Daniel Garcia. Um, it's and like Collision is just like that's the thing is like it was start off with such a hot product, and now it's just like, man, do I tune into this or is it worth tuning in, and all that kind of thing. So it's just like to have that shit, it's tough. It's tough because you want that was gonna seem like almost like the flagship show almost moving forward for a little bit, and then obviously Dynamite is just has the better spot and has the more eyes on it and stuff like that. And so it's just like finding that balance of putting your stars and putting them in the right position to get over and get your product over is the tough thing to do. And so it's a struggle. It's a struggle right now with AEW side, and ultimately I want to see him do well. It's just
Yeah.
yeah.
You're right. And Collision is in a, they're in a precarious position. Saturday nights,
Mm-hmm.
you've always got some sort of sporting event, whether it's college football, college basketball, NBA, baseball season will be coming soon. Um, it's going to be in that position where no matter what, it's going to go up against some sporting event. I think you'll have a little bit better time, now that we're kind of in the middle of the college basketball season, so it could find some some footing there. So, uh, we found out that Ricky Starks and Big Bill will defend the AEW World Tag Team titles on Battle of the Belts coming up on Saturday. They're going to defend them against Chris Jericho and Sammy Guevara in a street fight. And in fact, they're going to have Ricky Starks versus Sammy Guevara on Dynamite this Wednesday. Now, I have personal experience with Ricky Starks versus Sammy Guevara.
Yeah.
I've actually called a couple of those matches here in Austin.
Oh.
Uh, these two guys, they have had, I would say they've had somewhat parallel existence in pro wrestling. You had Ricky Starks coming out of the Indies and, hitting the NWA and then making his way to AEW. Meanwhile, Sammy Guevara, same thing, coming out of the Indies, Lucha Underground, and now with AEW. This could be, look, I know what they can do. I've seen what they can do. Give me your perspective of what you feel like they could do on Dynamite, whether leading up to that tag title match on Saturday.
I think they could, both guys have that charisma, their own kind of charisma that stands out. But both are such talented workers in the ring too, and you're able to see, it's Sammy from his athletic standpoint, but Ricky more so from the aspect of storytelling. I think he really stands out, but he can still pull off a lot of athletic stuff too and make things look legitimate. And so I think they'll match each other obviously very well. And the simple fact that they've worked with one another so many times and know each other is already an intriguing add-on to that. So I think they'll set everything up very well for their collision match. Considering like Chris Jericho has that controversy swinging around him, it'll be interesting to see how they angle it to the crowd to kind of how they're going to position each guy. Is Ricky still going to feel like the heel? Is Sammy going to be like the baby face? How are you going to all gauge that almost? You know what I mean?
Well,
So
and
that's a line you got to walk to.
yeah, and that's going to be kind of the interesting aspect of it because yeah, Ricky I think is supposed to be the heel, Sammy's supposed to be the baby face, but we know that the AEW fans, they'll cheer who they want to cheer.
Right.
So we'll see how they react. I will say, and I think, yes. So this poster right here,
Uh-huh.
that was my very first Inspire Pro show here in Austin,
Oh.
January of 2016. And in the on the left, Ricky Starks versus Sammy Guevara. Now that was for the Inspire Pro Championship. Ricky Starks was
How
Inspire
about
Pro
that?
Champion at that time. So yeah, so I like I said, I've seen these guys dance around and through each other for many years, and so yeah, I'm excited to see it. Anytime I can see those two guys or Keith Lee for that matter, having called their matches and interacted with them so much here in Austin, it's I love it. So
Can I make a prediction? My own personal, a selfish prediction. Let me say.
yes,
Okay, my selfish prediction would like to be that it will ultimately for Sting's final match. It will be Sting versus Ricky Starks 1-on-1 with Ric Flair in Ricky Starks' corner, and then you not only can tell that story, but it kind of makes it full circle because Sting fought Ricky Starks in that cinematic match that they had at Revolution that one time. So I think you could really get some intrigue there. And you not only send Sting off with a great guy that can work him in a singles match, but you add future star power, even more star power to Ricky Starks and his leg and carrying on.
I kind of like that. I
I
really
like it.
do. Look, I put in for media for Revolution. I've watched Sting going all the way back to the Blade Runners in Mid South.
Yeah.
Actually saw him as a Blade Runner at a Mid South house show in Longview, Texas in 1986.
My goodness.
I think it was right before I graduated high school and left for the army. Saw them. I'd have to go. I think I've got the pictures. who they were facing. I can't remember though. I want to say it was Dr. Death and Ted DiBiase. Uh,
Whoa.
they I think because I think they were the Mid South Tag Team champions at the time, and the Blade Runners were coming in. They were the rookies. Had been in wrestling for maybe a couple years. So yeah, I want to be there for Sting's final match.
I do too. You're making me itch to be like, I gotta buy a ticket. Like I gotta buy a plane ticket and hopefully apply for credentials.
Exactly. So before I let you go, Bryan Danielson had his match at Wrestle Kingdom. He got the victory, and now he is set to face Zack Sabre Jr. at New Japan's New Beginning Osaka on February 11th. We've he's told us we're seeing the last year or so of his career. So he's wanting to go out, and this is, I would say, this is probably a great way for him to go out, wrestling in Japan, getting the New Japan shine. Just talk for a second about having that. It's a rematch of Wrestle Dream, I believe.
Believe so.
But just talk for a second about seeing Bryan Danielson, Zack Sabre Jr. one more time, this time in a New Japan ring.
I'm all for it. I just love the style that Sabre wrestles, and I also love the style of Bryan Danielson and the package that Bryan Danielson is, like as a person and as a wrestler. So, and yeah, I think it's a fun matchup. I mean, and either way, like they told a story the first time they met up, and I love the idea of Zack Sabre Jr. with his joint manipulation stuff and just being that cocky ass heel, and then Bryan Danielson also being able to lay it in, and him expressing that this is his last full year as a wrestler, basically. I love the eye patch stuff. It's just a lot of fun with him, and it's pretty cool that, and it's a neat way that you just put it too, is how, he's kind of going out on his own way. And that's kind of how Bryan Danielson always was and should have been. Like, he kind of marches to his own drum when it comes to wrestling and stuff, and doesn't put all the stakes in what other people do of like, hey, what makes a star and what defines a star. So him being able to kind of go and be like, I'll do these New Japan stuff and do what I want to do, and basically check these off the list of, my bucket list of what I wanted to do as a wrestler. And so I think this is pretty cool. And not only that, but he's working with established guys, and then helping other guys too, like Zack Sabre Jr. for further get his name out even more. So I like it a lot too. I'll always be a Bryan Danielson fan no matter what. So it's cool stuff.
I will too. I was lucky enough. I was backstage for an AEW event here, and I got to meet him, and he and I were just and it was and you're talking about beating, march to his own beat.
Mm-hmm.
He and I were talking about the fact his kid was crying on the airplane on the way.
Yeah.
Just life stuff. It was great. It was great to interact with him, and yeah, you want him to have the match he wants, in New Japan, have him, finish up his career the way he wants it. So, yeah, excited to see that happen coming up in about a little over a month from now in Osaka, Japan. So,
how about that?
Yeah, there you go. He is Dominic DeAngelo, catching on the One of a Kind podcast with Rob Van Dam, right?
That's correct. You nailed it.
And Gagne and Magnum with Greg Gagne, Magnum TA. Get it wherever you get your podcast. Dom, I appreciate it, man. Always enjoy talking to you. Hopefully we cross paths here soon. But for now, have a great 2024, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Stu. Yeah, maybe I'll see you in Greensboro. The road to Greensboro, if you will.
There we go. That's it.
There we go.